You're listening to the Elevate Your Call to Service podcast. Here you'll gain tools to lead proactively, conquer overwhelm, and revitalize your law enforcement teams and your agency.
We're your hosts, Michael and Cathy McIntosh. Mike is a retired sheriff and current division chief in the Denver metro area with nearly 40 years of law enforcement experience.
Cathy is a business and branding expert and a longtime law enforcement wife with a unique perspective on the human side of law enforcement.
Together, we share a powerful blend of practical experience and insightful roadmaps to help you elevate your call to service. Welcome back to the Elevate Your Call to Service podcast. We are so excited to be with you today and talk about something that can often cripple a leadership journey, and that's communication and communication style.
Yeah, it's good to be back in the podcast room. It's always fun just to come in here and just to be able to think about how it is that the different topics, how they impact leadership. And we're no experts in the field, but we do study it a lot. We have lived a lot of it, a lot of life experiences, and we just enjoy putting it out. And we're in this season, we're grateful for those that listen and take part of it
For sure.
with us. And
For sure.
I talked about this season a little bit, and right before we jumped on, we were talking about Christmas shopping, and I'll let you talk a little bit about how Christmas shopping goes in the...
Well, we have one of those families where you are as equally surprised to see what everyone does when they open their presents as they are. So we can just probably leave it at that and let our listeners imagine how that looks.
Yeah.
But I had asked you if you were finished with your Christmas shopping. You said, well, have you finished my Christmas shopping? And that's a little bit rude, but it really is how it goes.
It really kind of is,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. And yeah, it's quite often that I try to make sure, and it's kind of funny because our kids and now our grandkids are starting to understand that Grandpa really doesn't know what that gift is, but you're always gracious enough to make sure that Grandpa's included in the thank yous part of that.
Well, and we don't exchange gifts for each other.
Right.
We stopped doing that years and years and years ago, and we would rather do some kind of experience during the year. And we try to go away for my birthday and just get somewhere sunny when winter strikes here in Colorado. So it's just really not. You are free. You are free from the Christmas shopping experience.
I'm so blessed in that way. Well, I have to take up a good gift for my wife, and I just take her to nice places in February.
You do, which is very sweet. But we do communicate as often as we can, and I try to let you know what I've chosen, but most of the time it just gets wrapped before we even really talk about it.
Yeah.
But communication, getting back to our topic, is something that can really hurt a leadership journey or something that can absolutely enhance that leadership journey. By the end of this conversation today, our aim is to help our leaders start to identify some of the mistakes that can hinder their impact and some of the communication habits that might start to weaken their credibility or hinder the performance of their teams. So we really are hoping that people can walk away with some practical tools or practical knowledge so that they can self-evaluate and see what type of mistakes they might be making and how they can strengthen their communication. And I know one of the things you say about communication is there's no possible way to communicate too much.
Right.
Even when we think we are over communicating, there are still going to be people especially on large teams, that come back and say, that wasn't communicated to me. I didn't know. I didn't perceive it that way. So let's just clear the table of the idea that there is any realm of too much communication.
Yeah. You can ramble. Just saying a lot of words doesn't mean that you're communicating or over communicating,
Mm-hmm.
but you're absolutely right. It's very difficult to over communicate.
Yeah. And in that, we do want to clarify, and that's our first mistake. You don't want to just ramble on and on and on and on and on, over talk, or start to make things that could be very simple turn out to be very complicated, where people just get lost in a diluted message because you've spent so much time talking about context and telling backstory that
Right.
it's hard to even discern what the point is.
Yeah, and it really leads to this inconsistent decisions across your shifts, a lot of repeated questions, really some frustration that goes on there. And sometimes that frustration is mistaken for laziness
Mm.
because your team, if they don't know what you're trying to communicate, they're not going to be doing it. And are they not doing it because they don't understand because there's no clarity there? Or are they doing it because they're lazy? And there is a lot of wasted time. And all of that starts to lead to this morale erosion around a team.
Mm-hmm. And one of the tips that we like to share when you are somebody who maybe has a lot of words is to jot down a few non-negotiable ideas or strong points that you want to make in this method of communication, whether you're just doing a shift briefing or you're addressing all of the troops or you're emailing people or you're speaking to, in front of a community. It doesn't matter what style of communication you have, but if you can nail it down to a few points that you absolutely want to make, that will help you keep your conversation more concise, more on point, and not get so wrapped up in trying to fill space.
Right. The conversation that is taking place, you need to deliver the material that needs to be delivered. Just like you said, understand what your points are going to be. And I know that a lot of times we try to anticipate what the questions are going to be, but we're never going to be able to anticipate what every question is going to be. So don't put that in your communication. Allow an opportunity for people to ask questions if they're unclear.
Mm-hmm.
And if you try to answer every question that might be coming at you, you're not going to leave that opportunity. People are going to start tuning out and turning off once that rambling starts to happen.
Yeah. And I know, again, we've talked about your longevity of career. I know that there have been times where you've worked for leaders who simply talk too much. And there's been some old school examples that have come up in our conversations this week, and some of them have really kind of made me laugh. But what impact does that have for the listener, for the patrol deputies, the sergeants, even lieutenants, when the executive staff just starts to get way too wordy? How does that impact the line officers?
And initially, you try to stay engaged, but our attention span, just as human beings, and even more so in today's day and age, with us being so used to quick hits of information,
Mhm.
when you get somebody up there that really, as we call it, is using too many words, again, it starts to get mind drift. You
Mhm.
start to think about other things. You start to maybe even think how you're going to apply what it was that they communicated first and maybe second. But if they're still droning on, you're completely tuned out to what it is that they're trying to communicate at that
Mhm.
point.
Mhm.
And when that becomes consistent, it's dreadful. It's dreadful to even know that, yep, I've got to go into this meeting, I've got to go into this room, and it's going to be, other than a couple of minutes, it's going to be a waste of time.
Mm.
And time is so precious anymore.
Mhm.
And it becomes very frustrating. And it leads to, as we talked about, that starts to get to where it starts to erode on morale
Mhm.
for a
Mhm.
team, for a shift, for an agency.
Yeah. And you run the risk of a line officer of taking on the reputation of, well, he didn't do what I asked. He wasn't paying attention. Okay. Probably he was trying really hard to pay attention,
Right.
but got lost in the rambling and in the context and in the backstory that wasn't absolutely necessary. Just get to the point and let people ask questions as needed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When you can change that culture to where people are asking questions, it gives you an opportunity to hone your message. It gives you an opportunity to understand your audience when you're so used to just using too many words.
Mm.
It just does not give that opportunity for anybody to
Mhm.
ask those clarifying questions.
And again, it really dilutes your clarity. So, one thing that came up for us a few months ago was, especially when you present or you have a larger group of people that you're talking to, so more than two or three, and you say, "Are there any questions?" And nobody wants to put themselves on the spot, and they feel like, "Oh, it's going to make me look really stupid if I ask a question." So the leader can then rephrase things and say, "Okay, I know that there's more clarity that can come from this conversation. What kind of clarity do you need?"
Right.
Instead of saying, "Who has a question?" you can just rephrase how you're asking for that information. And then it just kind of calms the room. Well, I can ask for more clarity. I'm not going to look dumb about that.
Right.
I thought you said this. Is that what you meant? Is much more than, it's much more comfortable to say than, "Hey, I missed that point. Could you say it again?" So keeping your audience in a situation where they feel comfortable and safe and prepared to ask those questions without feeling stupid, is the leader's role. That's the leader's job,
It,
to
it-
keep the audience comfortable.
yeah, it really is to know the audience,
Hmm.
to understand where they're at and really what their role is in the organization.
Hmm.
Sometimes if we if if we communicate the same way, no matter who it is that we're in front of, we're going to miss a lot of the clarity that we need to have in our communication.
Yep. Yep. And that leads us to our second mistake, which is trying to sound clever or entertaining instead of really just focusing on being clear. A lot of people call this a word salad, or using buzzwords, or making vague motivational, quote unquote motivational statements where you're just trying to really build up your team. You don't need to sound polished and impressive. And a lot of leaders do that by reaching for clever ways to say things. Or one of the things that really made me laugh is you talked about a long ago sergeant that you worked for and said that he would literally just put these big words
Words.
into his sentences and did not even know what
Right.
those words meant. And he would just be that just makes me just giggle, which had to have been a nightmare to try to work under somebody like that. But don't do that. It's not impressive. It doesn't motivate your team. It doesn't equip your team to do anything that they need to do. So speak in plain language, speak in clear terms, and make sure that people know and understand what you're talking about. You need to know your audience, and you need to know the vernacular that they use, but um, don't try to shift your leadership style into a mold that seems to be more clever or more polished or more trendy. Just be yourself, be clear, be plain.
Yeah.
You're going to score way more points and motivate your team in a much higher way.
Yeah, you really are. It's so important, as you've already, hit on, that we do and we do speak clearly. And in law enforcement, we have a lot of different acronyms that are supposed to explain different things. And that typically works
Mm-hmm.
if our audience is law enforcement, if our audience is working in that and they understand that. But so many times we get into situations where we just start talking in those acronyms, and people, if they're not part of that team, they're going to be lost.
Completely lost. Yeah.
We do that to our community all the time.
Mm-hmm.
We'll start talking about something and we'll throw out those acronyms, and it's really important that we go back and that we're clear about that.
Mm-hmm.
That we explain what that is before we use the acronym or right after we use it.
Mm-hmm. Those community meetings that's such a great example of that. You're talking to an audience that has no clue what those acronyms mean and
Right.
what all those initials that you're throwing around mean. So yeah, stay clear and know your audience and cater to them for sure. So what happens when a message maybe sounds polished but doesn't have any meat, doesn't have any point, doesn't have any purpose? How does that impact a team?
Yeah, the team still leaves that briefing or that 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 meeting that was supposed to deliver some information. The team leaves that confused and still wondering, so what was the point of all of that?
Mm-hmm.
Because we tried to be clever, or because we tried to use big words because we wanted to look good or sound important, or sometimes it's there's a fear that there's people in the room that are smarter than we are, that know this more, and so we try to talk up to that, even though we don't know that. And it's very unclear. In our world, you can be exposed very, very quickly if you're trying to, as they say, BS a BSer.
Mm-hmm. And another mistake that leaders make is not giving that clear direction and clear next steps. This is what I want you to do. And we're going to talk about this and kind of let it unfold a little bit. But communication that doesn't lead people is just noise. And that's a very important point to keep in mind always. So if you take one thing away from this podcast, I would say that's it. If you're not leading people with your words, you're just up there making noise and you're not helping anyone. Teams need to know who's responsible to do what success looks like, the outcome that you're trying to reach, who needs to do what, when it needs to happen, how that success is going to be measured. And when details like that are missing, the leader comes out of that room thinking, yeah, I've led my team. I've told them what to do, but there's this really big void and the team's kind of left improvising, making it up as they go along, trying to put the pieces together like a puzzle when you don't even know what your edge pieces are. You just don't have the framework to work with.
Right. When I look at the role of a leader, the two most significant ways that we lead is by doing and by communicating. So our actions, what we're doing, is kind of how we communicate with our body language, or just by our actions, right? We're still communicating. We're not having to use words to do that, because we're in it, we're involved, we're leading from the front, as they say. The other way is to be able to communicate what it is that we need to be doing and how we need to be doing that. And a real simple example, a real simple statement is just, a captain gets up there and says, "We need to get crime down in the district. Let's tighten things up out there." No strategy, no assignments, no metrics, no next steps. But the captain puts that out in such a way that you're supposed to know what it is that means. And that is, unfortunately, we see that in leadership. We see that in law enforcement. But it is not good communication, because it doesn't give any clarity. It doesn't give any direction. We're the ones that are supposed to be setting that up.
Yeah.
There's a couple of ways that we can do that. And I think the way that I just explained is the way that we don't want to do that. And we see that happen. But the other way to really bring people into the conversation is to have that be interactive. Throw that thought, that idea out there, what we need to accomplish. That's what the leader's role is. The leader is supposed to be setting the vision. This is the target. This is the goal. This is where we need to be. But the leader doesn't necessarily have to be the only one that comes up with the way of getting there. And I would submit to you that we don't want the leader to be the only one that is coming up with the way to
With the plan. Mm-hmm.
this is something that should be collaborative. This is an opportunity to bring your team into, to empower them, to give them some ownership in what it is that we're doing. And believe it or not, they probably know better what we need to do than
The
those
leader
of
does.
us
Mm-hmm.
that are not. I'm looking at statistics that say that we're getting hammered over in a specific district. I'm not working that district.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what we need to do. I just know that we need to be accountable for what our statistics are,
Mm-hmm.
and we need to move the needle in the right direction.
So instead of saying we need to tighten, well, you can still say we need to tighten things up out there, and then say to the room, who's got some ideas? Let's brainstorm this together. What do you guys think needs to happen? And then the conversation starts and the ideas start to flow and the plan starts to take shape, and the leader didn't have to create that plan before stepping into the room. But circling back to being sure to give your team clear direction.
Right.
The leader's job then is to take those suggestions, maybe put them on a whiteboard, whatever. And then at the end of the conversation, okay, we're going to do these 3 things. Maybe we just got 10 really good ideas.
Absolutely.
We're going to focus on these 3 things. That's how we're going to tighten things up out there. Now go do it. So there's still that clear directive to give your team.
Yeah. Yeah. What are the steps? What does success look like?
Mm-hmm.
We're going to work on these 3, and then we're going to move on to
Mm-hmm.
these 3.
Mm-hmm.
But it's giving that clarity so that when they do leave the room, when the team leaves the room, the sergeant and the commander are clear on what it is that needs to happen.
Mm-hmm.
It also gives me, as the captain or as the chief, the opportunity to then circle back around and say, how are we doing on that?
Mm-hmm.
What are our obstacles? What do I need to be thinking about now?
How can I equip you better?
So exactly. Yeah. So I can get you the resources that you need to be successful at the job that we're wanting you to roll out, or we collectively as a group are wanting to accomplish.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so good. That can just be night and day difference with the way that a team can execute and actually go make a bigger impact in a community. Just that one change can really start to light up your team and give them marching orders. And again, it's all pointing back to the mission. We're here to accomplish this mission. How do we do it? Now let's go.
Right.
Let's go.
Yeah.
Another mistake that we see is that, and I'm going to tie this directly to insecurity. Insecure leaders, especially, but you don't have to be insecure to make this mistake, try to use over communication to prove their expertise or try to garner respect without earning it. So they go up, and any opportunity they have to talk to a group of people is spent tooting their own horn, trying to show how much they know, that they're truly the expert, that they are the one who knows more than anybody else. And I think so many times that comes from a level of fear. Maybe they're starting to lose respect, and so they try to garner it back up again by putting on the me show. That's what I'm going to call it. It's the me show. This is what I know. It's my way or the highway because I know what's best. And so there's this pressure to appear competent, to spew out their credibility or make themselves look impressive. So they start to share really long, involved stories about their past, or they over explain their decisions, or they keep things even secret and don't tell people the full story. They hijack communications and they start to make everything about themselves instead of about the mission, instead of about the team, instead of about the community. And it breaks things down really, really quickly.
Yeah. I would tell you, there's been times that I've struggled with this in the different positions that I've had. And as I worked through the different leadership positions, I always had others out there that I could bounce ideas off of. And I'll tell you, when I became the sheriff, there was early on in those days, my leadership style is always more inclusive than exclusive, right?
Mm-hmm.
Always talking to my executive team, not really out there making decisions on my own.
Mm-hmm. We've talked about silos.
Yeah.
That's just not really your style.
It's
It can happen,
it's not
but it's
my
not your style.
style.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll never forget, I was in a meeting at one point with an employee group, and the employee group had made a comment that there were some grumblings that I couldn't make a decision without other people being involved.
Mm-hmm.
And I reflected on that in that moment and responded with, I can make a decision. I can make a decision on my own based upon my knowledge, experience, training, opinions, or I can include people around me as a sounding board
Mm-hmm.
to get as much information as I possibly can and then make a decision.
Mm-hmm.
So it isn't that you can't make a decision. It's, why don't you make the best decision by bringing your partners in with you
Mm-hmm.
when you make that decision, and then ultimately you're responsible for the final decision. But I really don't know why you would want to cut that out
Mm-hmm.
of your decision making. When I look at, I mean, there are definitely times in life or death decisions, and that's not
Oh,
being
no,
over
we're talking about
dramatic.
right.
We're in law enforcement. You need to make the
Snap
decision,
Mm-hmm.
and you need to be able to do that. And you need to draw on, all of the things that I just spoke about. Your past experiences, your training, life experiences, decisions that you've had to make like that in the past. And you make the decision and you go on.
Mm-hmm.
But I think when you start to talk about those leaders that may be insecure, I think that they believe if they can demonstrate that they can make that decision all on their own, they don't need anybody else, that brings them to a higher level, that helps feed that insecurity.
Mm-hmm.
It's, in my opinion, it's the complete opposite of what they need to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
Because there is so much wisdom around us. To exclude that is actually arrogant,
Costly,
and very costly.
Mm-hmm.
And it's never beneficial.
Right.
And you're going to get caught up in that. And we see that in communication. And that's why you see sometimes every time somebody speaks, they have to give their resume.
Mm-hmm.
They have to go through their history and why it is that they are speaking about what they're speaking about.
Mm-hmm.
Let your words, let your leadership, let the way that you demonstrate that out,
Your command presence.
and that your command presence, the way that you collaborate, let that be the demonstration of who you are as a leader.
So good. So good. We are coming to the end already. This has been such a good conversation, but let's leave as we always do with a challenge for listeners for this week. What can they do to start making a really big impact on the way that they communicate and the way that their communication is perceived?
Yeah, I would say that first you have to be very introspective
Mm.
and understand where you're at on that communication line. What do I do well? And where do I let my insecurities or even my inexperience, where do I let that get in the way of me communicating well? And so you have to figure out where you're at and then start to include others in your communication journey, bringing others around so that you are ensuring that your communication is clear, that you're giving direction, that there is a plan, that we know what success looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can't answer those questions, invite others around to help you answer those questions, so that every time that you communicate, that team feels connected.
And it's the difference between talking at people and involving people.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
It really goes a long way to building trust in your team, collaboration in your team, unity in your team.
Yeah. If you master that, no matter what level you are in an organization, you are going to be looked at as somebody who communicates well. And that's where we want to be.
Clear over clever all day long, and people over ego all day long.
Yeah.
Good. We want to help our listeners learn that clarity and consistency outperforms complexity and confusion, and they can avoid rambling and over-explaining in favor of sticking to the point, knowing exactly which points you want to make, and including people in the conversation.
Yeah. It can be pretty simple.
Yeah. Sometimes hard to execute.
Yes.
And the habits are hard to break. But if you can grab a partner, every time you go out and talk to somebody, okay, these are the 4 things I'm trying to work on. How did I score today?
Yeah.
And let them speak openly and honestly into your performance,
Right.
your quote unquote performance. That's going to go a long way.
Yeah.
Good. Great talk.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for being here. Ready to build a stronger team, improve your reputation, strengthen officer safety, and recruit top talent? Visit us at leleaders.com and schedule a call with us today. We'd love to discuss how our coaching programs, workshops, and keynote addresses can help you build proactive leaders in a reactive profession.
In the meantime, if you like what you've heard today, we'd love your 5-star review on Apple Podcasts.